Hey everyone! This week I am going to be doing a bunch of videos, and that is because I want to go through and do my full Dominaria set review. Dominaria is the next set of Magic that's coming out. The pre-release weekend is the weekend after this week, so next weekend. And the actual full release will be the week after that for the new set. I'm super excited about the set, and it's going back to the original World of Magic if you don't know. So there's a lot of callbacks to the old lore and stuff, and old characters, and seeing again, and it's really cool. And at the same time, it has a lot of really cool stuff mechanically, which is what I'm going to be talking about here. I mean, I also might mention lore stuff, but yeah. So I'm going to divide the series into 6 parts, just to keep them in reasonably sized videos, so I'm not like here recording for 3 hours. And that is number 1, 1 for each color, and then 1 for colorless artifacts like lands, gold cards, so forth. And my all-important review of the basic lands of the set, because I love basic lands. So yeah, so we're gonna go through and out. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I'm reviewing these mostly primarily for limited, because I am mostly a limited player, which if you don't know, limited is a type of format of the game where you don't bring a deck to it. Instead, you open up like booster packs, and either you do a draft, which you like pass them around, you do a bunch of stuff there, or sealed, where you just open it and build a deck. And it's my main format, and I'm reviewing it from that perspective. But I'll comment if like any of my EDH decks, because I've done videos on all my EDH decks, if I pick one up and put it in there, or if I happen to get one, because I don't actually have that much money on Magic right now. If I can, I might do like some pack opening for Dominaria, but I can't actually like afford that much stuff right now. So yeah. So let us hop right into it. I'm lazy, I don't do editing, so I record these cards right as I do them. So jumping right in, this video is gonna be about white. Although first card here is not white, but it's gonna be here anywhere because it's number 1. And the first card is Karn. Karn's back, everyone's favorite Silver Golem. And this card is just great. In both limited and in almost every format except like because it's great in modern. It's gonna be great. It's gonna define standard. It's great in Commander. I don't know if about mentioning Legacy, and I'm assuming it's probably not quite there yet. I mean, it might be good enough for Legacy, but I don't know. I'm not an expert on that format. But yeah, so essentially 4 mana for a 5 loyalty planeswalker, which is already great. Which is +1, real top card large your library. An opponent chooses 1, put that in your hand, and then you exile the other one with a silver counter on it. And its -1 is you can take one of those cards that were put aside by the opponent last turn and put that in your hand. So it's just such a great card draw engine, and yeah, no, it's like effectively you're drawing like 2 cards a turn, and 2 cards a turn, and it's just like some of the better ones you have to get a delay, but it's just so great. It also has a -2 that makes a 0/0 colors construct, which gets like +1/+1 for each artifact you control. So that one has like some cool synergies if you're like going that way, but most of the power's in like the first 2 abilities. But like having shot blockers protect card like is reasonable. But this coming down is effectively a 6 mana loyalty planeswalker. It's just great for 4 mana, and it's so hard to deal with. So yeah. So Adept Will. Actually, no white cards. One thing to note for this whole set is that actually it's a very high power level. So many cards I think you would like look at and evaluate very highly and like just being like solid cards, I feel may end up just being unplayable. There's very few strictly unplayable cards for limited this format, but yeah, no, it's it's interesting. But this is Adept Will. It's an instant, it's a combat trick that gives you +2/+2 and indestructible until end turn. I love the art. I love the Benalian art and like of the stained glass armor and stuff. It's okay. Having both the +2/+2 is nice. Like as a combat trick, I don't mind it. It's like cheap enough that it's in the range, but it's not something I need to be picking highly. Often these kind of decks like this, like maybe one, maybe two of these, like it gets around like just like removal and stuff, so it feels like a slightly worse blossoming defense in a lot of ways, but it seems alright. Yeah, I don't feel like doing like a full like letter grade or anything because I feel like I'm just like copying like limited resources, which I mean, if you want actual advice from someone who like, I'm pretty good at draft, I think, and I'm pretty good at limited, but if you want to watch like an actual video, you should watch a limited resources video. Not mine. Unless this cute girl is soft-spoken for ASMR purposes, you can watch that here. But yeah, just disclaimer, I'm okay at limited, but I'm no means like a master. I'm not like someone who I've never competed at like a competitive level. But yeah. Okay, next one is Aven Sentry. It's a 4-mana 3/2 flyer at common. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's solid. I mean, a 3/2 flyer in the air is a beater, but yeah. I mean, also at pre-release, especially as everyone's trying to figure out the mechanics and stuff. Honestly, flyers is just a great deck to run because people are caught up in like new mechanics that forget like basic like things to defend against, like flyers. And ends up usually being pretty powerful early in the format. But yeah, I don't know how to feel about this one. It seems okay. Again, this is one that like I'd be like, yeah, that's quite good in other formats, but I'm just wondering if the power level of this format does that. And the two toughness on there is a liability when you're getting that luck point, but we'll see what other removal is. First, legendary. Legendary is a huge like theme in the set where many sets legendary is technically a downside because you can't have more than one legendary creature with the same name. But many of the times this one is like legendary is a good thing. This is Baird, Steward of Archive. It's a 2/4 Vigilance for 4, which is, honestly, I think that's actually a reasonable stats. Like 2/4 for 4 isn't bad, but the Vigilance is nice, especially on a body like that. And it has a mini Ghostly Prison on it, so creatures can't attack you or planeswalk you control unless your controller plays 1 for each of those creatures. Honestly, I could see myself putting this into many of my white decks, so just because these kind of effects are great, like definitely it's going to be going into humans. It's definitely going to be going, because unlike Ghostly Person Propaganda, it says over planeswalkers you control, so it's definitely going to be going into 5-color mediocre friends. Beyond that, I think this is the main two decks I probably get to test it in. I don't know how good it is in humans, but that one does kind of leave things behind. It is a soldier, so I'm like, it isn't quite good enough for me to put into the warriors. From a limited standpoint, I think that's actually just a quite solid card. Yeah, it's only double white, which is like not thing. One thing that this dice set does have is that it has some triple color cards, which even if you're playing that color, like you kind of almost want to be evaluating those cards as if they were on a splash, which I think we're going to be talking about in a moment. But otherwise, Baird, Steward of Archive, I think is actually a really solid card because that effect both just slows down early aggression and like them building out the board, and otherwise just taxes what they can do. And on a decent body at that, which blocks well. Okay, Benalish Honor card. It's a 2-mana 2/2, but it gets +1/+0 for each legendary creature you control. I think it's fine. every pack is guaranteed to have a legendary, so you're probably gonna have a few legendaries, and you can probably get like some pretty good stats. I think it's not impossible to make like, on average, I think the average power and toughness you get in practice was probably about a 3-2 for 2, which is good stats, but other than that, I don't think it's anything like amazing, because it does require, you do have to have that extra oomph to go behind it. But I mean, as a 2-drops go, it's a solid thing, and there's something to be said for just having it as a 2-drop. Oh, I never mentioned what decks I'm going to put Karn in, and essentially that's going to be 5-color Super Friends, or Mediocre Friends, and honestly, it can almost slot in any deck that I have, just because it's such a good card draw engine. Most likely, I'll probably put one in 5-color Mediocre Friends and put the rest of my trade binder, because they're going to be worth a lot for a while. So this is the first triple color card, and what I was talking about that, where like double color can be hard to put in your deck, and triple color, you want to consider that, even if it's one of your main colors, as a splash, where it's like I'm playing a red-blue deck, or a white-blue deck, and if I don't have fixing to help me cast this card, you may want to actually consider like playing it. This set has okay fixing. It's not great, it's not the worst, but it's nothing out of the park. So, but this card as is, let's talk about this, which is, it's a 3-mana 3/3 that anthems all your other creatures. If you can cast this, and if you're like solidly in white, this is a great card. 3-mana 3/3 RU card I play. Although, like, in recent sets, like 3-mana 3/3s almost have been becoming more of like the status quo instead of something really good. That said, it's still really good stats, and plugging an Anthem effect on there is just so great. This is going right into humans. Although I'll test like the mana and stuff. Although humans is base white, so and it has the best mana fixing of all my decks. So yeah, no, that'll definitely find a place home in 5-color humans. I could see it potentially also going in my Brago tokens deck, because just another Anthem creature that has like a solid body. Like, it doesn't do any ETB effects. It's like it's no Angel of Invention, but it's solid nonetheless. Okay, Blessed Light. It's 4 and a white for an instant that's exiled hurt creature enchantment. It's good. It's just solid. It's good removal. Like, it also hits sagas, which is super important in this format. So it's like, it hits relevant types, and it hits exiles creatures. It also hits an exile, not just a destroy. And it's not like a lot of the white stuff, which is super conditional. Like, and it's an instant speed. Honestly, like, sure, it's a little expensive, 5 mana, but honestly, for your common removal, like, this is like very nice. Not one that's a bit expensive though, and not something I'd consider running in EDH though. Even though it has that flexibility, it's like, it's just not a Vindicate or anything like that. Board the Weatherlight. Look at the top, okay, it's 1 white for, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a historical card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest of them out of your library in any order. And historical cards are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. I don't think this is good. Sure, it's good card filtering, but unlike a lot of like the commune types of effects, like even if you have a lot of artifacts, even if you have a fair few like legendaries and sagas, in limited, oftentimes you will miss on this, and unlike commune effects that commune like with dinosaurs, you can hit like lands and things like this. This doesn't hit lands, which makes it much worse in my opinion. Even though I love the art. You got Jorah and Gideon and Liliana there. But yeah, I just don't think this is good, even unlimited. Yeah, like only looking at the top 5, like you're gonna miss so much with that, and it's so bad when it is. Like, the other commune, like, type cards are like Commune of the Gods and Commune of Dinosaurs and stuff like that. Because they hit lands, like, you're likely to hit that in the top 5 because about a third of your deck is lands. And this, you're just not guaranteed to get it. And I think if you have the deck where, like, most of your deck is those cards, which is does not seem like are likely in this format. Maybe, but no. Okay, next up is Call the Cavalry, which is 3 and a white for create 2/2 white knight creatures, tokens of vigilance. This is just good. I mean, it's 4 mana for 4 power and toughness worth of creatures across 2 creatures, both with vigilance. That's real solid. And I mean, it's one of those things where it's like 4 mana for 4 is just a great stats for a card in limited, and also is a common and whatnot. It helps you go wide. You saw we had that Lord back there at rare, and there's some other things that care about that. Knights is a relevant subtype in this format, so I'm a fan of it. Charge. It's a 1 mana instant that gives creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. It's okay. I mean, we see a lot of these effects like Pride of the Conquerors and things like that, and it's simple, but it just doesn't do enough for me. Like, I'm not a fan of kind of like the white weenie go wide decks personally, and sure, you can use it as like a situational combat trick outside of that, and being 1 mana does increase it, but only getting +1/+1 is just not enough, and I'm just not a fan of it. Devantant Trapper. So this one is a 3 mana 3/2. Decent, okay stats. Whenever you cast an historic spell, tap target creature an opponent controls. This one's interesting because if you have enough historic spells, this is very good. If not, it's okay. Like, the benefit of tappers is being able to tap something every turn and lock something out, and this was by no means anywhere near, like, guaranteed to tap it out. I'm kind of down on this, unless you really have that critical mass, and while there are lots of legendaries and sagas, all of those are uncommon, and it's just not one of those things where the bulk of your deck isn't. Like, if you could guarantee, I think you would need to get like about 2 out of 3 turns every turn to be able to like make this worthwhile. But you're just not going to hit that. So I'm not a fan of this Trapper. Danitha Compassion Paragon. It's 2 and a white for 2/2, yeah, but with first strike, vigilance, lifelink. Those stats and keywords, very nice. For a legendary creature who's a knight, which is all relevant, she's also very hot, which is important. It has great stained glass in the background, great armor, that sword with the stained glass. She's like one of the cuter things. She's great. Her aesthetic is on point, which is important. And it says auras and equipment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I think that second line is not super important in this format, but the stats alone are really nice. It's relevant that she's legendary. I think she's just real solid. I don't think she's good. She's not good in humans, just because those stats, while good for limited, aren't great. And even then, the second ability isn't used by any of the decks I'm using. I'm not really using like any Voltron or equipment builds right now. Although I am considering building a SRAM deck, but I'm not yet, and that will go right in there, but I'm not building that yet. So, not quite on there for Danitha, but I mean, for limited, she's solid. Daring Archaeologist. When enters battlefield, you may return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Whenever you cast an historical spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it's a 3/3 that can apparently get bigger and returns in your hand. This is a thing on a historic cast that I can get behind because it stays around its lasting impact. Like, it also gets you back an artifact, which I don't think it's going to be super common in this format, but I still think is enough of an upside. Like, if it obviously needs some work, and even with it does work, I think it'll be okay. But I mean, 3/3 for the stats, even at 4 mana, is still decent. Like, once you get above 3, I think you're doing okay when it comes to your stats and whatnot. And the ability to grow to, once you get it to a 4/4, it's like just real solid, because a 4/4/4 is nice. That potentially gave you some value. And anything beyond that is just gold. Dauntless Bodyguard. So when it enters the battlefield, choose an chart you control. So it's first of all, it's a 1 mana 2/1, so it's Phantom lands. And you can sacrifice it to give that creature indestructible in turn. Honestly, I think as a 1-drop, this is real solid. And not just because it has the Benelish armor and stuff, which is amazing. Just like, even just on turn 1, beyond just like turn sideways and just Phantom lands, like for like a nice, if you're trying to go just pure aggro, is good. And essentially being able to like protect some of your bombs later on is just very nice, and it just makes it really hard. You can like attack with it and stuff, and yeah. Oh, it's just real solid. I like it. Dub. It's 2 white for a enchantment aura, and it attracts a creature, and they get +2/+2 first strike and becomes a knight. Becoming a knight is sometimes relevant, but +2/+2 in first strike is decent stats for, unless the first strike with that power boost is actually quite nice. Like, it has all the normal like drawbacks of auras, and it doesn't really do anything when it enters battlefield. But if they don't remove that, that is like a real problem for them. But yeah, I just don't know. It'll depend. It's one of those that you definitely don't want to play into like an open board and stuff, but I think it could also very much potentially steal games. So, like, don't play into a removal or bounce spell, but be careful of it, like you should always when you're casting auras. But yeah. Alrighty. Next up here we have Evra Halcyon Witness. It is a 6 mana 4/4 with lifelink. It has an active ability of 4. Exchange your life total with Evra's power. So for 4, say like your patron 6 like at 14 life, you pay 4, and you go to 4 life, and this becomes a 16/4. And this isn't until end of turn, this isn't that, it's permanent. It's kind of like Tree of Perdition from Eldritch Moon, or the infamous Tree of Redemption from Masters 25 and Innistrad. But yeah, no, it's an interesting one. It's one that can just run away with the game if you can get it to hit, and could be disastrous if you don't. If you ignore the second ability, 6 mana for 4/4 lifelink is like below about where you'd want to be, but it's not the worst in the world. Like 4/4 is a decent body, and a lifelink on there makes it like a good draw at any point in the game. Like, even if you're having to chump, you gain more life and stuff, like if they're like big beater or whatever. And honestly, this trades with so much stuff. And if you can get it to work, the best case scenario is that you play this past turn, and then you declare attacks. You swap your life with it, so you go to 4, it goes to, say, 16. It hits, you gain 16, you go to 20, you gain 4 life, and now you have a 16/4 lifelink. And until they remove it, you're gaining 16 every turn. And that's great. Obviously, the worst case scenario is you do that, and you switch your life with their power, and then they kill it, and now you're at 4. Or even worse, with the trigger on the stack, they give it like -4/-4, and then you just lose the game because its power is 0 at the last time it was checked on the board. And while this is a significant downside, you just don't activate its ability when you would be like, if they're open with mana, they look like they're telegraphing like a removal spell or something like that. You just don't make that switch. And then you just swing your 4/4 lifelink, and you're still pretty happy. So all said, like, I think it's not an intuitive card at first, But I think it actually is quite good in both limited. I think it gets much worse in Commander where it's multiplayer and there's more people potentially to mess you up and there's a larger downside and risk and it doesn't do quite as much. So I don't know if I'm going to be putting it anywhere. Like it doesn't really fit into Big But's life gain because you only switch your power and who knows. Yeah. No, but it's a cool card. It's a cool design. Next up is Excavation Elephant. It's a 5 mana 3/5 with Kicker. Kicker is a returning mechanic where you can pay an extra cost when you cast a spell to gain an extra ability. And the Kicker is 2 mana, so you can pay 7 mana. And if it was kicked, you can return a artifact from your graveyard to your hand. I don't love this. I mean, 3/5 is a decent body. Like, sure, it is a little bit lower, but like that's a good blocker. It does what it needs to do. If you have artifacts you want to be returning, I could see it maybe being good. Well, I'll have to actually haven't really paid that close attention to the artifacts in the set, but it isn't like an artifact heavy set. I'd be much more inclined if it was saying like return target historic card from your graveyard to your hand, because I'd be much more inclined. But artifacts are the least represented historic card in the set. Like, obviously, if you have artifacts, it becomes okay. But even then, like 7 mana for essentially 3/5, like get an artifact back from your hand is okay. But I'm not big on Excavation Elephant. And just the 5 mana slot, you want some of your 5-drop to be more impactful than this elephant. Fall of Thorian. This is our first saga. Sagas are a new type of enchantment where you can you play them and you start on the first chapter, and at the beginning of your first main phase of your turn, you move the next chapter and you do the next one. So the Fall of Thorian is a 6-mana enchantment saga that when it comes to the battlefield, the first chapter is destroy all lands. Okay, so Armageddon, right off the bat, okay. And then after the third chapter of a saga, it goes to the graveyard. And the second and third one is each player returns 2 land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. I don't like this card. I just don't. In limited, it's just not what you're looking to do. In Commander, I don't like mass land destruction just because it slows down the game and stuff like that. Like, the places where Armageddon is good in like mono white beatdown and stuff, and like white weenie and what, where you want to like Armageddon them and stuff, you don't want them to get their lands back. The point of those spells is you want to clear out their lands, they can't remove your threats, and you have the better board state and will take over the game while they try to rebuild the mana base. And this helps you regain their mana base, and getting that like pure aggro strategy is just so hard and limited, where most decks in limited end up being some tilting one way of an aggro deck, or not aggro, but mid-range deck. Just you can't get that pure aggro. So I am not high on Fall of Thorian for honestly any format. Okay, next one is a reprint, and it's Gideon's Reproach. It has sweet art, because it's just Gideon punching the daylights out of this cultist. And the flavor text is great. On Amonkhet, Gideon lost both his Searle and his faith in himself. But he can still throw a punch, and he still knows a bad guy when he sees one. But it's 2 mana for an instant, which deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. It's slightly better impeccable timing, and I feel like 4 damage, for the most part, is destroy target attacking or blocking creature. Like, it won't hit the really big stuff, but yeah, it has the disadvantages of things like impeccable timing, what they do have to attack with it. But for a 2 mana removal spell, I think this is decent. And yeah, no, I don't have much else to say about it. It's a okay removal spell. I mean, I'd play probably up to probably no more than 3, but I'd definitely play the first 2. Healing Grace. This is an upgraded healing salve from Alpha, and It's, yeah. So for 1 mana, you prevent the next 3 damage that would be dealt to any target this turn by a source of your choice, and you also gain 3 life. So it's kind of like, you can use it as a combat trick, you can use it to like help prevent like when your creature is getting bolted, and the gain 3 life is kind of like an extra benefit, but you kind of, the best way to look at this is kind of like as a combat trick, and I feel like this is a sideboard card. Like if your opponent's running a bunch of Wizard's Lightning and you can like counter those and whatnot, and I just feel that it isn't, I don't know, I'll just say an action, but this is a combat trick first and foremost, and against like red removal, it can be used to like blank that. And I mean, but the thing is, as a combat trick, it doesn't boost your stats, so it can turn trades into just winning combat, but it doesn't turn like a chump into a win or even a trade, which is disconcerting. The 3 life is relevant sometimes, but I'm not high on this as a combat trick. I prefer the other one that we were talking about, like on the first cards. Next up we have History of Benalia, with amazing stained glass art. So it's a 3 mana saga. The first and second chapter is create a 2/2 white knight creature token with Vigilance. And third chapter is knights you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. This is 4 power and 4 toughness worth of stuff with Vigilance for 3 mana. I mean, over the course of 2 turns, and you get a boost to them after that on the third turn. A+. This is a great card in limited. I don't think it fits in the decks I'm running in right now for EDH. But I mean, there are commanders for like Night Tribal and stuff, and it's obviously great in there. But yeah, no, I like it, especially in limited. It is a mythic though, so you're not going to see it that much, but it is very powerful. And I could see it also being a standard powered house for kind of like a possible kind of like mono white deck coming out. Like, next up is Invoke the Divine. It's a 3 mana instant that's destroy target artifact or enchantment. You gain 4 life. This is just a sideboard card in case you have like you're fighting against a problematic like saga or artifact and stuff, and you gotta get rid of it. But otherwise, it's just a sideboard card. It's just like any other disenchantment effect. Knight of Grace. This is part of like a 2-card cycle, and it's a 2 mana 2/2 with first strike. Already love it. Like 2 mana 2/2s are okay, but 2 mana 2/2 for first strike, very nice. Like for the most part, we only get like Paickers of first strike, and this is just a full 2/2. And it has hexproof in black, so they can't murder it or whatever. Black removals in the set. Granted that this is not protection from black, which is an important distinction. And it gets +1/+0 as long as any player controls a black permanent. So this could be you, could be them, and if you're playing against a black card, this is amazing. It's a 3/2 first strike that blanks against the removal. If you have black permanents, like, that's great. It's honestly just overall a great card. Yeah, no, this is, I think it's one of the best 2-drop creatures in the set. Along with its counterpart, which is the same thing except opposite in black. Knight of New Benalia. Now we're talking about 2-drops. This is a vanilla 2 mana 3/1 creature. I don't like it. I mean, it's a Raptor Companion without, like, it's a knight, which is sometimes relevant, but Raptor Companion was a card that you did not play in Exile or Rivals. And those were sets that had like heavy incentives to play in the tribe. This set has like minor incentives to play in the tribe, and I don't think you're just gonna play this. It's just not a good card. It trades up a lot of the time, but it dies to so many things, and it just isn't what you want to be doing if you're 2-drop. I could see it being better if the format ends up being fast enough. Because, like, if they don't, or if it, like, kind of leans to the extremes where, kind of like how Kaladesh was, where Kaladesh was one of those formats where either you were playing very fast with like the vehicles deck, or you were like turtling around with like blue-black artifacts. And the reason that because most of the meta was kind of like very dirtly in that one, that's why the aggro decks were so good. And you were able to just sneak in. And if this format looks to be a little bit dirtily, although this format does appear to be more like much more solidly mid-range, but leaning on the slower side based on like initial impressions. Yeah, no, this is it's interesting. Okay, I could see it maybe being playable, but even then I'm not happy about playing it in the meantime. Okay, so next up we have Quinde, Pride of femoris. It's a 4-mana 2/2 with double strike. So when you're rating the creature the double strike on the vanilla test, think of it as it's a 4-mana 4/2 with like worse first strike, which is okay. Like those stats are okay by me. But also it says creatures you control with first strike have double strike. If you have enough of those knights that like has first strike and stuff on like the 2/2s, then becomes 2/2s, becomes A+. Unfortunately, those are uncommon. These are uncommon. I feel like it's playable if you don't have more creatures with a first strike, and if you do, it's quite good. But the stats alone just aren't what you're looking to. I'm not looking to play this in humans just because I don't actually have enough stuff with first strike. Yeah, I think it's okay. I think it's passable. I mean, also it's a legendary, which is relevant, so if you have cards that care about legendaries, but yeah. Lyra Dawnbringer. It's a 5-mana 5/5 angel with flying, first strike, lifelink, and gives all your other angels +1/+1 and lifelink. Obviously, in Limited, I don't need to tell you that this card is amazing. 5-mana fan 5/5 is a card I would play. A 5/5 and a 5 flyer. 5-mana 5/5 flyer is a card I would be very happy to play, and that would be amazing. Also, give it first strike, lifelink, and an anthem effect. Granted, there aren't that many angels in this set, but the stats alone, this is a fantastic, phenomenal card. In EDH, I don't have an angel deck yet, but I want to build one as like my eventual goal of like having a deck for all the tribes of Innistrad. And she isn't going to be my commander because I do want to go Boros Angel so I can get like Archangel Avacyn in there and like Giselle and stuff. But she's going right in there when she does. But it's just really great and beautiful art. Just that Benalian like shield and spear and like gorgeous. Mesa Unicorn. It's a 2-mana 2/2 with lifelink. It's okay. I mean, it's a 2-mana 2/2. Lifelink is nice because, like, especially like if you draw it late and you're behind, like gaining a little bit of life is relevant when you're like gonna trade for a creature and whatnot. But all said, like this is a high power level set, and I don't think you'll play it, but you're not gonna be super happy about it. There's not much else to say. On Serra's Wings is a 4-mana legendary enchantment with enchant creature. And enchanted creature is legendary, has +1/+1, is flying, vigilance, and lifelink. So it essentially kind of like makes it like Lyra. This is another one of those enchantments which makes it really like it's pushed to be really good, even though it doesn't have like an ETB effect that like is like kind of like when you're evaluating like auras and stuff, you're like, if it has an ETB effect and you get that value even if it's removed, like you're like, okay, it gets around the fact that you otherwise are 2 for 1. I don't know how good this is. It'll depend on how bouncy this format is, but at the same time, this can end the game. And when it comes to actually like, because it has lifelink, if you're able to put this like on like a 5 power creature, and even if they like bounce it or remove it the next turn, like you gained 5 life, you got in like a bunch of damage, and even if you do, you don't like leave a blocker back. Like flying, vigilance, and lifelink are probably like the 3 best keywords that aren't like hexproof and indestructible, because those are on a different tier, but like they're the best 3 like common keywords. You know, I think, but at the same time, it is 4 mana. Which makes me like iffy about it, but we'll see. Pegasus Corsair. It's a 3 mana, 1/3 with flying. Whenever it attacks, another target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn. Okay, first off, 3 mana, 1/3 for flying is okay. I mean, I think it's not bad. Like, it blocks reasonably well, and the flying like helps chip in. But the fact that it gives any attack creature, it's not like only humans or knights or something, letting it get in, like, this is a beater. Like, Aerial Guide was a great card in Hour of Devastation, like, just letting you get in. And this lets you get in with your Yargle. Yargle climbs on back as Pegasus and flies into combat, and that's just a beautiful sight. But, yeah, I think it's a solid 3-drop. I'd play the first 2. You do have to have, like, good creatures to, like, wanna push over. And also because of I mentioned this earlier, but because of the nature of pre-releases and people forgetting to protect against flyers, this can be a very good card. Sanctum Spirit. It's a 4 mana 3/2 with lifelink, and you can discard a historic card to give it indestructible until end of turn. I can't say I'm high on this card. Like, a 4 mana 3/2, even with lifelink. Like, I'm not happy with 3 mana 3/2s unless you're doing something good. A 3 mana 2/3/2 lifelink I'd be fine on. But 4 mana 3/2 lifelink, and typically it's like, if it was just like discard a card, that'd be great. But the fact that you're having to discard a historic card, which honestly are probably going to be some of your best cards in your deck in this format, makes me think like, okay, you're actually not even getting that much advantage. You're giving away probably a decent card to keep a okay creature on the board. And I just don't like it. I'm not a fan of this card. So, yeah, no. Seal Away. It's a 2 mana enchantment with flash, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to exile target tapped creature and opponent controls until Seal Away leaves battlefield. This is great. Sure, the creature has to be tapped, but otherwise that's like 2 mana, instant speed, removal. A+. Not A+, but very good. I think this is one of the best pieces of white removal in the set. Sure, it doesn't hit Vigilance creatures, but yeah, no, very good card. Take very highly. Like, easily first pickable. Like, it's just so cheap, it's instant speed. Yeah. Like, even if they tap to attack, you can do it in response. Like, I think it'd be still a very good card, even if it didn't have flash. But, yeah, no. Good card. Surgeon in Arms. It's a 3 mana 2/3 with kicker. First off, 3 mana 2/3, But if you kick it, which is 6 mana, which is not too bad, you get to create 2 1/1 white soldiers. You know what? If you're I like this card. Like, a lot of the hero costs are like getting like up to the point where it's like very wishful thinking up there. But 6 mana is not impossible. And like on turn 3, 2 mana 2/3, 3 mana 2/3 is nice. And on turn 6 or like 7, or when you're playing this, a 2 mana 4 or 5 worth of power and toughness across 3 creatures is actually quite solid, and I actually rather like it. Obviously I'm not super high in this card, but I think it is I think it's a solid filler card. Now, if only there were white human soldiers, and I'd consider it for humans, but because no one makes human tokens, unless you're from Innistrad, so I don't care. The classics. Serra Angel. It's a 5 mana 4/4 with flying and vigilance. It's a great card. Like, 25 years later, great card. I mean, 5 mana 4/4, decent stats. Flying, great. Vigilance, it blocks like a champ. like 4/4 is just like a nice brick. It's just a good card. Can't say anything wrong about it. Great new art. It's classic, like, getting to say, like, I tap 5 and play Serra Angel. It's like, you get that, like, really nice, like, I mean, I obviously don't have the nostalgia for it, but it's like, feels nice, like, classic and old school, and it's just a very good card. Serra Disciple. It is a 2-mana, 1/1 flying first strike. Whenever you cast a historic spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Remember I was saying earlier about, like, the on historic cast, like, and I feel like, even though it's a flying first strike, I feel like this isn't the amount of power you want. Especially since, like, the historic spells aren't instant speed, so you can't use this as, like, a combat trick to, like, oh, you blocked. Now I flash in my Inkmaw Nexus. I don't know why that's the first historic spell I thought of, but, and you're there, and it's like, you get to, like, kill the creature, but, like, they're not instant speed, and it's a flyer if you need a flyer, like, but I'm not big on this card. Like, we've seen better 2-drops in this format, and honestly, I'd even probably take the 2-mana to do lifelink. Like, obviously, if you're weak to flyers, maybe, but the fact that it also just is not, it's atrocious on the defense, because you just can't get that +1/+1. If it was counters, it'd be A+, but nah. Shalai, Voice of Plenty. It's a 4-mana legendary angel. Flying. You, planeswalkers you control, and other creatures you control have hexproof. It's also 4-mana for 3/4 flying. I'm already into that. And you can pay 4 green to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This is another great angel. Yeah, I mean, the stats alone, pass, giving everything hexproof, like, granted, I don't know how relevant that is, because if this is on the battlefield, you really want it, your opponents are going to probably want to remove this first and foremost, which is fine, but, because it isn't super relevant, but I mean, that's great. If you're also playing green, you can untap this and start, like, antheming your board. That's just, it can be great. Like, granted, like, it can be hard to get to, and you have to be playing those colors, but even just for the stats alone, I think it's great, and all the other things are just, like, situational, but very nice when you can actually make them work. Great on July. Probably, I don't think it's good enough for the +1/+1 counter deck I'm playing, just because 6 mana is a lot to be spending on an effect like that. I could see it maybe going into Super Friends just to help protect, like, my planeswalkers from, like, Vindicates and whatnot. Maybe. Disher, Ancestors Apostle. It's a 4-mana 2/2 flyer. And whenever you cast a historic spell, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, this is a historic card I can get behind. It has lasting effects, like, you don't need to cast it every turn to, like, make it good. And you do have to have several things come together. You have to have critical mass of historic spells, and you have to have, like, enough creatures at 3 or less. Although since you're playing draft, you should have enough creatures of that and in the graveyard. I think if you have the critical mass of historical spells, which is, I'd say probably about 4 in your deck, maybe 3 to 4, and also more is gravy. I think it's great. Otherwise, I think it's a passable body, but if you make it work, this is just a great engine to keep going on. It's also a bird cleric, which is a great creature type. Tragic Poet. It's a 1-mana, 1/1, not something I'm looking to do. You can tap it and sacrifice it, and return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. As much as I love the aesthetic of the card and everything going about it, kind of like me being, like, partial to it because, like, I was an English major and all that, I don't think this is good. I could see it maybe being good, like, if you have, like, the history of Benalia and, like, other, like, really good sagas and you want to, like, repeat them, maybe, but otherwise I'm just not a fan of it. It just doesn't do much of anything. And the fact also you have to tap it, it's not like you can, like, play it and, like, just sacrifice it immediately to return. Makes me, like, more iffy about it. I'm not a fan of it. Like, I could see it maybe being good if you have other enough, like, critical mass of good sagas, but otherwise, no. Triumph of Gerard. The 2-mana saga. And the first 2 is put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control of greatest power. It's okay. Okay, let me, for the first 2, like, over 2 turns, getting 2 mana versus, like, worth of 2/2 versus power is fine enough. And then target creature you control with the greatest power gains flying, first strike, and lifelink until turn. I mean, if you have critical mass creatures, I think this is decent. Like, it's 2 mana, it leaves 2 mana power with power and toughness on the board, and lets you get in a good last strike. It is Saga, which is relevant for the historic stuff. It's cheap. I can get behind this. I don't think it's one of the best sagas, but you could do worse. Urza's Ruinous Blast. It's a 5-mana legendary sorcery with exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. It's also a legendary sorcery, which I don't think I've talked about, which you can only do if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. I mean, honestly, I think this is decent. Like, on one hand, board wipes are usually good, even in limited. Like, you could control when you cast them, it can just ruin your opponent's day. At the same time, a lot of the stuff that you're really worried about in this format is probably going to be the legendary stuff. So, it's one of those which you definitely run it, but I could see it you sideboarding it out against certain opponents who like have like tons of legendaries or whatnot. And granted, you can also just clean up the rest of the legendaries and stuff, and I think it's a good card, but it's definitely not like a Fumigate. Yeah. And in terms of my deck sets going into, I could see it going into humans, because humans actually has a lot of legendaries in it. Granted, in Commander it has the same weakness where legendaries are very important, and there's lots of them. But also into 5-color Super Friends, or Mediocre Friends. Definitely going to, since all those Planeswalkers are legendary. And also the fact that it's all non-land permanents is also nice. Next up is Academy Drake. Is a 3-mana 2/2 with flying, which is already something I can get behind. With Kicker for 4, so you can instead pay 7 mana, and if you do that, it gets 2++1 counter, so it becomes a 4/4 flying. This is just a good card. Like, its base level is great, which I think for most kicker spells, you have to ask yourself, this is a blue card. I shouldn't be doing this. That was the end of the white spells. I'm good at this. Well, there's a snack. So there's a snack piece. There's the next piece for tomorrow's video. But until then, I will hope you enjoyed this first part of the set review. And yeah, now there's gonna be a video every day this week doing another color, and I will see you then. If you have any if you disagree with any of my assessments of any of these cards, let me know. And yeah, I want to get as good as the set as all of you, and I'm curious to see what other people think of the cards in the set. Alright, well, I will talk to you all later. This video ended up being much longer than I expected it to be. I'm glad I decided to not do the whole set review in one sitting. Alright, I'll talk to you all later. Alright.